Hey guys, Jesse with TorqueKingTv. Finally broke something on the old juke. It's a perfect time to do a teardown to fix it and go through all of the snazzy upgrades we've done and check their performance. So let's get after it. So here we got the parts laid out. What happened was I was going a little too hard and I twisted it. Twisted the end right off the axle shaft. These are going to be upgraded when I put it back together, so just waiting on upgraded outer shafts. What we're going to go through here is I have our upgraded spindle seal set up on this. The factory one had a metal slinger and then I think a triple lip seal, and the seal material was kind of plasticky and it tears real easy, and then the metal slinger, it's a good idea, but it kind of acts like a mud scoop, and when mud gets in there it doesn't have any place to go but in. So I've got just a seal and then a V-seal wiper to just kind of protect the seal lips, and it looks like it works pretty good. The color of the grease, I've got several thousand miles on this, several water crossings, some mud. The grease looks the same color. It doesn't look like it's thinned out any, so that's a pretty good indication that water has not gotten in through our upgraded spindle seal. And as you can see on the outer shaft, the wear pattern, it does have pretty good coverage for a sealing surface. You can see the bushing didn't chew the shaft up. The bushing inside doesn't look chewed up. So we'll call this upgrade a success. We're also running mile marker hubs. The difference in mile marker and worn is that worns have a little bit deeper pilot and an O-ring to seal on the pilot itself. The mile markers just have a paper gasket. I made an O-ring to see if it worked any better than the paper gasket. I think it did a little bit. I still got some water in there, as you can see. You can see I got a little bit of orange in my hub and on the inner side of the bearing there. But the grease still looks good. I'm going to take the outer bearing out and wash it, and just to make sure it didn't get pitted or anything. So we've got our good Timken bearings in there. Factory Mahindra bearings, their wear pattern, the rollers got pretty cloudy after not very many miles, and usually you see that type of wear on a very high mileage Timken. So I went ahead and come up with an upgrade kit for the wheel hubs. The grease I'm using in the spindle is a moly grease. I didn't have to use a moly grease, but I wanted to see how it performed. Looks like it performed great. Typically, we've been using this in wheel bearings for years and years and years. It's done great. It kind of absorbs water but continues to lubricate. What I've been trying on this is a little different grease. And this grease will repel water instead of absorb it. And hopefully not thin like this other stuff. Although this did thin, I mean, I've got it in boat trailers and camper trailers, and it never seemed, even with those tiny bearings, it never seemed to lose any of its lubricity. But I thought I'd just give this stuff a shot and some high performance stuff, and it seems to have worked well. It does not look like it thinned out any, just where the grease wasn't touching the metal. It got kind of orange. When I broke this axle shaft, it did make quite a noise. I thought I actually cannonballed one of these mile markers, but I did not. I'll have to take this apart and check for wear. I did do a video. I think I posted it. I'll have to look. If I didn't post it, I'll have to post it. But the mile markers compared to the worn did have some wear inside that would allow the gears to have a little slop in them. And I didn't have very many miles on it when I did that video. But we'll take this one apart and just see what it looks like. So we got the grease all wiped out of this end. You could see that just the inside of the hub. It's kind of orange. You can also see in some spots where there was some moisture sitting where the rollers were, and you can kind of feel that it's not real smooth, but I'm going to keep running it just because I want to see what kind of life I can get out of these. And it might be kind of hard to tell on the camera. Let's see. See that it's cloudy right there, and this is the cloudiness I was talking about with the factory bearings. But they got cloudy all the way around with no moisture in them. What do they have, 1,200 miles or something by the time I got into it to change it to Timken's. And they were, the whole race looked like that, where the rollers were riding. And these Timken's, it just looks like that, where water's been sitting for, I don't know, this thing sits more than it drives. But for maybe a month or two it sat, and that's all it did, just kind of clouded it a little bit. And I have driven it since it's been sitting after I went through water quite a bit. Drove it a couple hundred miles down to, well, not a couple hundred and something down to Sheridan, Wyoming, down the interstate and back, and some local trips around here. And it didn't, it didn't break in past that. So these, the whole cup isn't soft enough that it just made a new break-in surface. I checked the rollers briefly when I took it out. They look good, but we'll see what they really look like when I get it out of the washer. And I did clean up the back, or the inside bearing. The inner part was orange, but it wiped right off. I do see some orange-ish in the grease right on the end. I don't know if it's just from pulling the hub off the spindle, or if it's from this inner bearing. I wasn't going to pull this inner bearing out, but I will, just to see what it looks like, and then I'll be replacing the seal. The new seals I've got with our wheel bearing kits, I believe, have a secondary lip on the outside to help protect the inner sealing lip. I had a hard time finding a seal like that in this size. I finally did, kind of limited availability, but I think I got some. If I do, I'm going to replace this seal with one of those double lip seals. Looks good. No water on this end. So I guess the little bit of orange in the grease right in front of the bearing there is just from the outer bearing when I pulled the whole assembly off the spindle. So we're good. I'll just get a new seal, and I might as well clean this since I got it out, and then we'll pop it back together. Woo! Hot, 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 hot! Now that we have everything cleaned up, you can see the inside of the hub looks okay, just a little orange around the outer part here. I went ahead and just kind of brushed that real quick with a wire brush just to get the loose stuff. The spindle bushing looks good, so I'm not going to worry about doing anything with that besides filling this pocket in here with grease. I went ahead and pulled another wheel seal off the shelf. This one's got a lip on the outside there, whereas the original setup I came up with did not, but I finally found some that did have the extra outer lip. The locking hub I found, I don't know if it'll show it, I found in there where the paints wore off. It is actually kind of wore into the locking hub. quite a bit, enough to catch your fingernail on real good for sure. Actually right here, it looks like it opened a pocket up. I don't know if I can stick a pick in it. Oh, yeah, it did flake a little aluminum off there. So there's some wear in the locking hubs. There's also, don't know if the camera will pick it up, but the shaft kind of focus, there we go, kind of pinched the teeth in the shaft gear. They're a little narrower than they're supposed to be now. It's something I'd still run, but it is something to keep an eye on though. Once the surface hardening is compromised, it probably won't be too long before these teeth just shear off. But we'll see what happens. The bushing in the back of this locking hub was fine. It didn't collapse or anything. The bearings, once I cleaned them up, they look okay. The outer is darker. It looks like it got hot, but that's just left over from rust, the inside. If it got hot, the inside would be just as dark as the outside. The rollers look pretty good, a little dark. Not too bad. This is the inner bearing, just for a comparison. Nice and shiny, just like brand new. Looking at the wear, looks hardly even broke in. So we're going to go ahead and re-grease these and put them in. Go ahead and pack the inner bearing first. Throw it in our bearing packer. Once you see it poking through rollers, it's done. See it coming through there. Take some of the excess grease. Put it on the outside of the bearing. Take some, put it in the bearing race. Drop the bearing in. Take our wheel seal. I don't have the proper size installer made, so I'm just using the back side of a bigger installer. Couple of taps, that's in. I'd usually at this time go ahead and pack a bunch of grease in between the seal and the bearing, but because I won't be installing this right away till I get that other shaft, I'll just leave it like that. Same goes for this side. I'll get this bearing packed, drop it in. I'd usually pack a whole bunch of grease in on the inside of the hub, but I'll wait to do that until I'm ready to go back together. But I'll at least get the bearing packed, so if I got to move this vehicle for whatever reason, I can at least roll it out of the way. See grease coming through between the rollers. And that's all done for now. The mile marker locking hub, I will grease off camera, but basically you just want to coat everything in grease. You don't want to pack it full because then it won't work when you need it most. But to put these back together, put the thrust washer on the gear like that. So it locks in the groove. Put the spring in. This is a recess for the spring. Put the engagement gear back in there. Take a wire snap ring. Put it down in the groove. And that's it. And the little spring cam will push this gear in to lock, and it'll retract to unlock. Thanks for watching this episode of TorqueKingTv. We'll see you next time when I get a one-piece outer axle shaft.